UBS says a recession is imminent in 2024. The creator himself of the inverted yield curve also says a recession is imminent in 2024. And the inverted yield curve indicator itself, with a perfect track record predicting 8 out of 8 of the last major recessions, also calls for one in 2024. And here's the thing, even if a recession does not happen this year, because there is lag between interest rate changes and their effects on the economy, we will almost certainly see unemployment go up and GDP growth come down this year. Which means whether there is or is not a recession, you should have a contingency plan in place for slower, more difficult economic times. And that is what we're going to put together here today. So let's go over 5 things that you need to do right now to be better prepared in a recession or simply slower economic times. So let's do just that. As always, my name is Derek and I got my degree in finance, so you don't have to. Now before we begin, I understand that money is not easy to come by, which means these things will be easier for some than others. And that's okay. But these 5 things are good goals for everyone, even if you can't accomplish all of them right now. Okay, so the first thing that you should do to better insulate yourself for a recession is to prioritize and pay off all high interest debt. This should be your main priority for any extra money that you have or make. In fact, for most people, it should be a higher priority than investing, because unless you take the time and effort to learn investing and trading to a high degree, standard passive investing will hardly ever yield a return higher than the interest charged on high interest debt, which means that you are technically losing money by investing rather than paying off high interest debt. Now, what is considered high interest debt? In my opinion, you can define it in 2 ways. A, any debt with a higher APR than the current average mortgage rate. Or B, in times where mortgage rates are low, any debt with a higher APR than the average return that you could make by investing, which in most cases means any debt with an interest rate higher than around 10%. Because if it is above the rate that you can achieve investing, then it is costing you the difference between the average investing return and the interest rate on that debt, multiplied by the amount of that debt every single year. And this only becomes more dangerous during a recession because investing returns are usually negative in the short term and because income generation becomes harder as unemployment rises. So, first and foremost, eliminate high interest debt as soon as possible. The second thing you should do is analysis on your job and on your job security and on the likelihood and the time frame of finding a replacement job in the worst case event that you get laid off. One of the main risks during recession is unemployment. So one of the best things you can do is have that hard conversation with yourself. What is the likelihood that you lose your job in a mild recession? What about a major recession? How quickly can you find a replacement job? And most importantly, could you continue your standard of living if that replacement job required you to take a pay cut? If so, how much of a pay cut could you withstand? Now remember, a contingency plan is not one that you plan on using, but it's one that you use in a worst case scenario. So remember, while these conversations can be uncomfortable, they are unlikely to happen. But in the small chance that they do, you'll be less stressed and glad that you had them. And that leads me to the third thing that you should do to better insulate yourself in recession, which is to make sure that your emergency fund is fully funded. Now, most people will tell you that you should have a minimum of 6 months of your expenses saved up in your emergency fund. But in my opinion, it actually directly correlates with step 2 and how long you think it would take for you to find a replacement job in the event of unemployment. If you think it'll take, say, 3 months in a good economic environment, double it. And if you think it'll take 6 months, double it, because it will be harder in a recessionary environment. And if it's unknown, a minimum of 1 year so you have the best chances of riding out the worst part of a recession. Not only that, if you think it would take, say, 3 months to find a replacement job, but you believe you might have to take a pay cut, then that also needs to be factored in. 3 months emergency fund plus, say, 9 months of the difference between your new salary and your living expenses. Again, this video is not fun, but it is important to at least think about these things. As they say, always hope for the best, but have a plan in place for the worst. Doesn't mean that we expect the worst to happen, but we are more than prepared if it does. Okay, the fourth thing that we can do is make sure that our portfolio is well diversified and that we are not reliant on the money that is invested, because during a recession, investments usually go down in the short term. Diversification helps protect them, and not being reliant on money invested is just as important, because the last thing that you want to do is have to take a needed withdrawal when your portfolio is negative, because it hinders its ability to recuperate once assets start recovering. And oftentimes the best returns follow a recession, which means that you would miss out on some of those returns if you had to withdraw at the bottom. So diversify. This is something that everyone should be doing anyways, but it will be that much scarier if you aren't during a recession. And finally, the fifth thing that you can do to be better prepared for a recession is to find 3 major ways that you could potentially cut a significant portion off your monthly expenses without drastically changing your lifestyle. One of the major themes of a recession is to have to lower one's standard of living. If you can preemptively find ways at lowering costs, this may somewhat be avoided. And I don't mean little ways like canceling Netflix. $20 a month is not really going to do much. And on top of that, it can dramatically change your free time entertainment. But perhaps eating out. Maybe you currently spend a few $100s every month eating at restaurants. Making those meals at home will absolutely save you money. And it might even make life more fun, especially if you get the whole family involved. And as someone who loves to cook, trust me, when you get the hang of it, most things taste a lot better when you make them yourself. Look, it's not fun to think about a potential recession, and I, for one, give the slight edge to avoiding a recession in 2024. With that said, because of the way our economic system functions, regardless of recession or not, there will most likely be some form of economic slowdown and an increase in unemployment in 2024 because of the lag between interest rate changes and their effects on the economy. So, while there is no point stressing out about it, there is a point to being as prepared as you can. It's just good personal finance. And I understand that some of these suggestions are impossible for some. And that's because while we're not technically in a recession yet, a lot of Americans already feel like we are. And that's mostly because of the high prices that we are dealing with because of inflation. So you are absolutely not alone if you feel that way. And these suggestions are just that. Suggestions and goals to strive for when possible. Hopefully we avoid recession. Hopefully inflation comes down to the 2% target rate, and hopefully it does not flare up when interest rates begin being cut. And hopefully the economy achieves a soft landing. But in the event that it doesn't, let's try and be as prepared as possible. While this video was probably more somber than most, I hope it was still enjoyable and enlightening. And if you like videos about personal finance, world economics, and investing broken down simply, you are in the right place. So please consider subscribing if you haven't already. This is a relatively new YouTube channel and it helps us tremendously. And don't forget to turn on the bell notification if you haven't already. New videos are released usually on Tuesdays, but sometimes I'll do a video Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday if something important needs to be talked about, or if there's a Fed meeting or an interest rate change. I will always do my best to bring that information to you guys as quickly as possible. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.